Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 4 o'clock, and I've now realized we now know that our chair will not be able to attend because she has been chairing a planning meeting in Cambridge. So I will be acting as chair, if that is in order, of the committee. And I will now use the script and welcome everybody. So I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee, Wednesday, 20th of March, 4 o'clock. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures or share on social media during the meeting. However, can I ask you all to turn your mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all leave the building through the side doors and use the external fire escape to the car park. If the meeting lasts more than 2 hours, we'll adjourn for a short comfort break. So, item 1 is changes to the subcommittee membership. A warm welcome to Councillor Sharp, who joined us as a member of the subcommittee, having previously been a substitute member. And this is the first time we have formally met since Councillor Maguire sadly passed away. I would echo the tributes which have been paid to him at Council and the various committees of which he was formerly a member. Our thoughts remain with his family and friends at this sad time, and he will be very much missed. Item 2 is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Richenda.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence has been received from Councillor Boulat, who is substituted by Councillor Moschini. And if Councillor Bradnam is unable to join during the meeting, then we will record her apologies as well.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Items on the agenda today? Can't see any. Obviously, if you suddenly realise in the way the conversations are going, please do indicate and we will record it. Item 3, minutes of the meeting on the 15th of November 2023 and its accompanying minutes action log. Are there any issues members wish to raise? If I may, from the chair then, I did have one that I was going to raise, and that is in minute number 89, we had some discussion, if you see, about housing for foster carers and trying to make more available so that established foster carers. Oh, so sorry. I've got
my name's Councillor Anna Bradnam.
I've got Anna Bradnam on YouTube. That's not supposed to happen.
I'd like to
Do apologise. Let me get back to the matter in hand. Right. That was the planning meeting, not a frivolous YouTube. That was the planning meeting she was in. We were just checking that she wasn't able to come. Right, so the minute I wanted to raise was to do with foster carers and getting a little more accommodation so that they could become foster carers or increase the number that they could look after for us. And I think there was general agreement that this was a good idea, but we didn't have it as an action in terms of how we would carry it forward. So we could put something into the agenda plan later or discuss a way of carrying it forward. But I didn't want to let that go. Okay, thank you. Was there anything else? Yes, Sam. Sorry, did I miss you?
No. It's only on the action log, the minutes from the 15th of November. There's 4 actions on there, but there's nothing to tell us where they are.
Could you give the page number?
Page 12.
It is page 12, good. Right. Ranjit.
It's the 4 at the bottom. There's nothing at the side to tell us, is it ongoing, is it completed, what's happening? And
This
from
is the minutes
15th
for
of
the
November,
15th of November, isn't
I
it?
would have expected some sort of response to be in there.
Please forgive me. So point number 94, corporate parenting annual report, Ranjit Chambers. Members will welcome and suggestions of a members officer workshop to discuss the possible establishment of the corporate parenting board with multi-agency partners and developments of a 3-year corporate parenting strategy. If I can just update you, I am currently working on the corporate parenting strategy with colleagues in the council, and Councillor Bradnam has been kept informed of the current developments and the progress made to date, and there will be further meetings arranged. Dates will be circulated at the end of the month to take that forward. That's in respect of the corporate parenting strategy and the work that's been done to.
Did you want to come back on that, councillor? Hey,
Well, all I would say is that sort of information is what we would expect to be on the side of the report, so we know at what stage
Thank you.
things are.
Noted, and I'll make sure that
if I
future meetings.
could add to that, what also be useful is to know who's doing it. And indeed for members reading it, what input they can
Of
have
course.
or who they should drop an email to ask
Okay,
about a particular aspect. I
Thank
think
you.
In terms of, I think we have that in as well on the other column. Thank you.
okay. And can I answer the second point, which is about the corporate parenting board? So we have agreed that there will not be a formulation of a corporate parenting board, but we have created a corporate parenting steering group, and the terms of reference again have been shared with Councillor Bradnam, and young people have been consulted.
Can I just ask who makes up the corporate parenting steering group?
So if I circulate the terms of reference, I think that will probably clarify all the questions that you may have, and I'm happy for you to come back to me should you have any further questions.
Thank you.
Yes, I would make the point that I think that corporate parenting is an unusual duty and a responsibility that we have. And the more of the subcommittee who are involved in it, the more continuity we have for the care of our children. So it's certainly not one that is in any way party political, as I'm sure you would assume. So the more people are informed, the better,
Thank you.
so that nothing comes as a surprise or has any omissions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Did you want us to comment on point number 95?
If you've got any information, yes. that'd be
Okay.
great.
I'm going to refer to Catherine Isaacs to respond to point number 95 and number 96.
Hello, my understanding is that there is a plan to include the trauma training offered by the virtual school, which is a headset training. We're just trying to confirm dates and availability of all members so that we can offer that. And that's a training that's offered to schools and to staff across Cambridgeshire County Council. So the plan is to integrate that into the training plan for members. We're just trying to work out arrangements of it.
Do you mean members generally? Of the full council? That's good, because if we're trying to be a trauma-aware organisation, we don't want this expensive training and really good training being underused. So hopefully you will have a deluge of requests when it's put out, but that will be going to all members then.
That was my understanding that that was the request. So that's what
Great.
we're in the process
Thank
of
you.
arranging. Yeah. And the same then, the next point about training in relation to corporate parenting being offered to all county councillors wherever possible. So the training programme that we've been in the process of building will be available to all county councillors rather than just to members of this subcommittee, so that we're expanding all members' understandings of the corporate parenting responsibilities and commitments that we're asking them to make.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're aware we have members development panel meeting on Monday. So the more we can get even this penciled in, the better. But Rishenda is on top of it. We're all right. She's in charge. But yes, we'll expect to just have that added for the 25th. Thank you very much. There are no more questions, amendments, queries. Are members happy for me to approve the minutes as an accurate record? Thank you. remind me to sign that. I won't do it with ceremony now, I don't think. And we've already raised minutes on the action log. Were there any more on the action log? Thank you for those, though, Councillor Hay. Right, petitions and public questions. I don't believe we have any received. Nothing else. Fine, so we'll move on. Item 5, the participation report. We are joined, I hope, by Helen Love, our new service manager for quality assurance, and we're asking you to come closer so we can see you. Was the idea to sit in the middle? Okay, right. So we can see her on screen if we can't, even if we're at the same table. Thank you. Make sure you're online.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Is that everybody? Okay, thank you, Helen. Over to you.
Thank you. This is my first meeting and I'm pleased to present this report from the participation service. Sorry, I'll get closer to the mic. You've had the report in advance, so I won't read it verbatim to you. We haven't got the time. But the key things, I think, to note are the introduction of the participation strategic group, which came into play from December last year. And then we have the ongoing participation work with our Children in Care Council and our Care Experience Forum, so Voice. They meet on a monthly basis. We also have our youth group started up in March. We're looking to expand that, but that is growing steadily. And we have drop-in sessions available at some of our key provider locations as well. That includes some of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people, which is a particular area of growth for us going forward. The council have also relaunched the Mind of My Own app, which is another platform that we can use to gather the voice of our children and young people, make sure that that's included. And we currently have ongoing the Bright Spot survey for all of our young people who have experienced or continue to be in our care from the age of 4 to 25. That closes at the end of next week, so we'll hopefully be able to report on that going forward. Our young people are involved in training delivery across the service and also in recruitment to make sure that they are included. Their voice is present in all that we do. Were there any questions?
Thank you for bringing out the highlights. While others are just checking through any note, already, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions really. One, and it's more of a general question, and it's very, the paper's good. 3.1, where we're looking at the various 5 bullet points of implementation. What is success? How do we measure success of this? And the second point is on 3.17 about the survey, again, which is great, to get that survey. Again, presumably, obviously, the team will be going through the results of that survey at some stage, and obviously, using that to improve the group as well as reporting back. So that's it's just really, I'm quite happy with the report. It's really just sort of, we've got a lot of great things there, but it's really a question of how do we measure that we've succeeded really, or going in the right direction, shall we say?
Helen.
So in terms of the strategic group, making sure that our participation offer is embedded across the service, that all of our young people have the opportunity to take part in activities and have their voice heard. And which survey were you referring to? The Bright Spot survey?
It's the one right at the bottom of the report, 3.17. There's the Bright Spot survey. Which is great, because I think that's because we're here for the children, for the young people, and it's important to get their views. And what I do like about it as well is the fact that it's being completed without the care or allocated worker there, which obviously is good to try and get that away from, not saying that they're not doing a good job, but it's obviously gets more of an independent feedback from the child. Yeah. So so again, that's good. You know, I'm not criticizing it at all. I'm just trying to see how we can actually improve it even more.
So that ability to give genuine feedback is really important to us, which is why this is a commissioned survey through Quorum Voice, an independent organisation from the local authority. They manage the reporting on that for us so that we can then feed the feedback from our young people on their well-being into how we plan to deliver services going forward.
Could I add into that, if you'll forgive me, Councillor Sharp, and that is to draw a distinction between that and our strengths and, oh, sorry, so, you know, the questionnaire. Difficulties. I was trying to think what the D stood for. Strengths and difficulties, which I think is a national template, isn't it? So this is different, and you're obviously able to put things into that that are, you know, of particular interest to you. So the presentation of that will be very useful. I just wanted to sharpen up that is different, and indeed in addition to the strengths and difficulties. Yeah, you're nodding, so I think I just get that on the record.
Strengths and difficulties are routine healthcare reviews, and this is a standalone, much more in-depth survey capturing 30 points.
Councillor Hay.
Yes, I would just like to ask about 3.16. It mentions a youth club continues to run monthly in the Fenland area. Whereabouts in the Fenland area? And what age range of children in care attend this youth group? And is it open to children from all over Cambridgeshire or just from the Fenland area?
As you completely appreciate, geography is a big barrier to engagement in person in Cambridgeshire. So although it is open to any young person who is currently looked after, geographically it's a little bit limited currently. So we are looking at other locations. This current project is in March. So that allows young people from almost as far as Wisbech, I would say, and around. In fact, we have got one young person coming from Wisbech shortly. So age group wise, we run up to 14 currently. Well, 13 technically, but there's a little bit of a cusp for young people who have slightly delayed development. Potentially, we're flexible really, and down to 8, I believe, currently.
I think you heard me, didn't you? Yes.
No, Councillor Hay quite rightly was wanting to make sure that, as you say, geography is a barrier, but the more we try and spread it, the better. If nobody else has asked the question I had in mind, I wondered if you could explain to us, and we do have a new member, and I don't think I ever had it explained to me, how the Children in Care Council works, and there, you know, where the young people come, who's invited, where are they coming from, is it online, that sort of thing. So we get an idea, what is the reach? Because I'm very aware we've got quite a lot of out of county, and I don't know who the invitation goes to. I'd be pleased to have that on the record. Thank you.
Currently, the Children in Care Council is an in-person offer, and that takes place in St Ives, which is relatively central to the county itself, but agree that it's difficult for those that are out of county to engage in person. That's why we've recently moved the Care Leaver offer to a virtual offer, so that is now online, which makes it more accessible. Obviously, there are concerns for our younger children about online safety and thinking about how we ensure their safety while they're in an online space. We're keen to explore ways of engaging as many children as possible, and we continue to work with the service to do so.
I think implied in my question is that some element of it could be perhaps opened up for older pupil, students, as you say, older young people, as you say, with the proper safeguards, because obviously they're doing a lot of online family visits and things like that. So to have them participating would be good. Thank you. I think that's everybody's questions answered. Thank you very much, Helen. And we look forward to results of the survey.
Thank you.
Thank you. So item 6 is our regular report from the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association. Unfortunately, I gather that Tracy is not only unable to come today after all, but is unwell and unable to join us online. So we have, presenting from the council's point of view, you could introduce yourself. And what I've suggested with Richenda is that Tracy, when she's feeling better, can look at this online. And if we can point up while we're going along things we would have liked to ask her if she'd been here, Richenda will make a note of those, and we'll see if we can pursue those with her, because the presence of the foster carers representative is so valuable when they can come. Thank you. Could you like to introduce yourself and the
Good afternoon,
report?
Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. My name is Steve Crossman. I'm the incoming head of service for fostering, RAPS, family time, and the family group conferencing service. Shall I continue with the report?
Introduce yourself and the report. Did I not make that clear? I apologise.
You may have done. So I'm pleased to present to you today the report that has been compiled jointly between myself, Despina Kaora, the service manager for fostering, and Tracy Stevenson. Whilst Tracy is sadly unwell today, she has been part of the compilation of this report and is aware of what has been submitted to this committee. You all have had sight of this report, and I know that Councillor Bradnam has submitted her own questions in preparation for this committee. However, what I will do is speak to the highlights. I think it's important to recognise and actually celebrate the work that the service is doing and working in partnership with the CFCA. There is an awful lot of correspondence that goes between myself and Tracy in identifying what is important for foster carers moving forward and how the service wishes to be developed. This report is also further informed by a fostering survey that was completed around January time with the support of Elle Johnson, which identified and reported on the issues that were most important to foster carers. So this is not, this is well informed by the wider foster carer group as well. The report not only acknowledges the ongoing partnership work between the local authority and its foster carers, but also how the local authority wishes to promote the ongoing retention of its foster carers by dealing with those issues most pertinent to them in a timely way. The report draws attention to the fact that a retention working group has been set up, which meets on a bi-monthly basis and is attended by members of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association, and is looking again at what the issues are that are resulting in carers leaving the authority in a way that may be deemed regrettable, in which I mean not natural retirement, and they may be leaving to another independent fostering agency or through an untimely exit from their fostering career. Those meetings have started, and I'm aware there is interest by elected officials to be part of those meetings going forward, and the service would only welcome such initiatives. Whilst we're working on retention, we're also seeking to improve our offer to foster carers, and there is much work going on behind the scenes in respect of that. The service acknowledges how we are also working in partnership with foster carers who are, of course, expert in the role of being a foster carer in recruiting other people that may wish to go into that career. Support groups within Cambridgeshire, I'm very proud to say, are actually very well attended, and there is a good, I can't think of a good word, a good atmosphere of that takes place within them. I've currently been to most recently to the Wisbech one and have the Cambridge and another Wisbech one this week, but there is good attendance and the carers are using those mechanisms well. They will naturally be evolved as Cambridgeshire uses initiatives that are supported by such companies as the Fostering Network over the next year. As part of this report, the CFCA have raised a number of issues which were reported on, which the services needed to respond to. These include the delays currently in achieving passports for children in care. It is helpful to acknowledge that that in the completionist report, we were all obviously up against an Ofsted inspection as well. So we'd hoped to provide a somewhat more comprehensive answer to some of these challenges and work in partnership with our corporate parenting team. However, we have answered the questions to the best of our ability and continue to chase these issues on behalf of foster carers. Foster carers have been frustrated with some of the delays around seeking passports for our children in care. and the natural bureaucracy that surrounds the passport application in relation to this. I think what is fair to acknowledge is that these issues do not just pertain to the passport service, but how quickly the service works in partnership with the corporate parenting service in escalating issues that are so important to children in care. I have today been at a meeting in which we've discussed a escalation policy to make sure these things are dealt with in a timely way to celebrate the family life that children should be able to enjoy when placed in the fostering home. The next issue relates to transport for children in care, which is a significant council priority at this point in time. The service, and Tracy is aware of the fact that we have recently undertaken a supported recruitment campaign to support with transport arrangements, which includes asking foster carers whether or not they would like to be involved in this, in order to make sure that when a child goes into a fostering home, they're able to be well supported in their transport to and from school and the contact with people that are most important to them. The situation will require additional consideration and development, really. We are nowhere near achieving what we want to on this particular issue. We also need to make sure that as a system, we are raising those transport requests in a timely way and making sure that we're able to escalate any issues in a way that is meets the needs of children. What is helpful is that foster carers are being encouraged to raise any issues in a timely way as well. So we're working toward as one team when addressing those transport issues. At this point in time, social work staff and foster carers are working together in order to ensure that children are transported, and the local authority, even as recently as today, has reviewed its current rate of mileage to support carers not feel as though they are being disadvantaged by supporting transport. The matter of savings for children in care has resulted in considerable confusion for our foster carers. 2 years ago, the then Director of Corporate Parenting and Fostering raised a letter to foster carers, which was somewhat ambiguous around what foster carers were required to do in making savings for children in care. We are pleased to report that there is work going on behind the scenes to ensure that those savings will be taken at source moving forward, and that foster carers or children are not made vulnerable by the individual decisions that those that care for them may make in arranging for their savings. The next issue was around emergency clothing payments and uncertainty for children that need those resources the most and in the most timely way. Whilst I'm pleased to say that actually those children do receive emergency payments relatively quickly, there is work to be done in terms of ensuring that we celebrate with our carers the offers that can be made to them when they're caring for children on an emergency basis. So that will need to be sent out very shortly. The foster carers are requesting that they would like a re-evaluation of their fostering fees and allowances. Having met with the CFCA relatively regularly and with other foster carers, these relate largely not to the individual remuneration that they receive, but upon the framework through which foster carers are part of and receive their skills. Having personally come from the independent sector, I recognise there's somewhat quite significant disparity from how foster carers are remunerated within the local authority in comparison to the private sector, and what has been acknowledged is that we will review that on an ongoing basis. The CFCA have also requested that we confirm that annual budget, and I can confirm that there are conversations going on behind the scenes to acknowledge what that budget will be and ensure that it is identified in a clear budget line. The finance staff within Cambridge County Council have identified the money to be there, that Tracy herself will be made known what that allowance will be, and the money will be transferred. There is no suggestion that they will not receive that money. What has been challenging is that the money has historically, from what I understand, been taken from the transformation budget and now needs to be assimilated within the wider fostering budget. I think the vast majority, so the carers also make reference to the need for online safety training, and the training and development part of fostering is currently working within that to identify what is most helpful. It has been
Sorry, I think, could we stop there? Because there are some quite complicated issues we've dealt with, and I'm really glad that you're doing it in such detail and in front of us, as it were. And it sounds as if in some cases we have got some additions in, like the mileage being increased, whereas we've got transport team awaiting response. So could I just take it up to that bit, because I think the finance one is quite complicated as well. Can we just look through those issues raised by the CPCA? And whether there were any questions at this point that the members might like to raise. So that in number 3.1, was there anything about the passports? That seemed quite straightforward, but obviously, yes, Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. It mentions in the paper that it's escalated. It looks like that adds up to about 13 working days. What's an average delay on this at the moment? Presumably a lot more than that.
I can't comment what the average delay is. I think what I can represent is acknowledgement from the foster care population that upon the child coming into care and upon that that family wanting to identifying that family holidays, many of us do in January, wanting to go away in summer, there needs to be a much quicker process in ensuring that as carers they have not only the permission to take that child abroad but also the means to do so. So I can't comment unfortunately on what the delay is.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The transport, were there any questions? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I used to sit on this committee many moons ago. You didn't know that's why. Don't you worry. I used to sit on this committee many moons ago, and it's lovely to be back, albeit briefly. I had two questions. One that was very interesting to read. So thank you very much for the detailed work. I had two questions. One kind of vaguely procedural for 3.1 and 3.2, where in both cases there are some teams where we're awaiting response. What's the mechanism for getting those responses? Is it like an update to a following meeting of this committee, or are those how are those sought?
Apologies, is the question in relation to updating the committee in respect to how we are progressing with the matter, or is the question in relation to how the escalation process results in a clear resolution?
I would imagine kind of both, because presumably the latter happens and then the former happens. You see what I mean? But I'm guessing, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of a member of this committee, presumably at some point there is an update, and I was wondering whether that comes separately or whether that comes at a subsequent meeting of this committee. And you will understand why I'm asking this when I ask you my second question.
I would be pleased to update the committee at the next meeting about the success that we've had in working in closer partnership with our corporate parenting colleagues to, and whether we can collate some kind of empirical evidence as to how many issues there were in comparison to how many issues there are now. That should be relatively straightforward when we go out to carers and identify any of the passport challenges that there are. I think the key in how we resolve these issues going forward is by presenting a very united service in between the corporate parenting service and the fostering service to ensure that there is regular communication and that there is an intolerance for the drift and delay that is sometimes experienced for our children in care. I can only talk at this point in time, I'm on week 8, to the culture that exists between myself and the current head of service for corporate parenting, in which we talk very regularly about specific children and ensure that even today, those passport issues are resolved quickly.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much. I will ask Alex this next time I see her, because I'm sure she's, but basically I was interested to read the part about transport. So this is mostly in relation to 3.2, because I'm well aware of the ongoing issues with education transport and what we're doing as a sort of, as an authority, and not necessarily as a corporate parent, but as an authority about that. And I think these are quite related. And I was wondering whether, because the education transport team's response in the paper is awaited, I was kind of wondering what sort of discussions were being had with them, because the more of a united front you present in terms of the negotiations that we're having with the combined authority for what their current bus reform plans can do for us, the more this, because I'm supremely conscious that this is a huge problem for our children, all of our children, not just the ones to whom we are corporate parents. And I am wary of silos because these are our enemies. So I was wondering what in practicality was being done about that.
There are probably two responses, both from myself and from my colleague to my left. But when we think about the level of transport that is required for our children, it is somewhat specialist. So many of them have particular emotional behavioural needs that require a very sensitive approach to supporting them getting to their destinations. So we've had a number of meetings. I think we've had 2 meetings more recently with the Transport Service, bringing issues about, to their attention and that have been shared with us from both children and carers, and how those transports are conducted, which they are following through. But also, I think one of the key challenges we have is sufficiency around those transport arrangements. We desperately need more transport officers that are going to support with their taking in to and from, and ideally in a way that celebrates the important relationships that children need with those individuals, that make them feel safe when they're going to and from school. Now, one of the ways in which the fostering service has responded to this is there will be a number of people within our foster care population who actually would be quite motivated by the opportunity to provide some transport for some children and be remunerated at an appropriate level for that as well. We're not asking them to do that as part of their difficult and committed role at the moment. We're asking them to do that supernumerary to that and recognising that. So we have gone out to our wider care population to see if there is any interest. We will continue to work with the transport team in order to ensure that their sufficiency meets the needs of our children in care. And also what we would like to do in the future as well is ensure that we have a level of influence in the training of those individuals so that they are responsive and sensitive to the needs of our child and care population.
That's helpful. That's a related one I was wanting to raise under the transport. I have a transport appeal tomorrow. Yes, I see you, Councillor Hay. And I was welcoming the exploration of giving carers more delegated authority. That should, we hope, be quite straightforward when there are no funding implications. We know that very often there will be funding implications, but we need to demonstrate that trust. And if that can be done legally and within proper protocols, I would certainly welcome that. And as you say, that creative use of people who could be trained properly and are available for other sorts of journeys during the day. I think we can all see the possibilities there in terms of trips to day centres for older people, and then after they've done the children and so on and so forth. So thank you very much. I'm sure it's in good hands. Councillor Hay, you had signed.
Thank you. It's very much along the lines of what you were saying. I mean, it's in 3.2, it mentions that foster carers have asked that there be, where there are no changes in placement or school, could the contracts roll into the next term? The obstacles to that happening. The idea of delegated authority, are there any obstacles for that being put in place?
Did you hear the question, or could you repeat it when you answer it?
Apologies, Councillor Hay. I was giving your question thought, and I'm not entirely sure is the honest truth. So I may need to come back to the members and update you on that question if that would be possible.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems like we're having a sort of running online document in progress here, which is a little awkward, but I really appreciate the thoroughness with which we can deal with this. Thank you. If that was all on the transport, 3.2, 3.3, the savings accounts. Was there any questions on that one? I think for many people that might have been enlightening to know, oh gosh, it is an issue, isn't it? There are a lot more issues than we necessarily think of. And emergency clothing. Again, being able to use kindness, but not rely on it. Essential. Thank you. And the finance issues. This is where I was wanting to be sure we had a good go at asking our questions as well. Were there any questions from members that have been prompted by Steve's presentation? I was thinking about the rhythm of budget setting and wanting to make sure that if there are bids in here, and there are senior councillors here who are part of this more than me, we make sure that we see them coming and can make provision for them. And indeed, comparison with the private sector is always going to be an issue. So thank you for bringing it up. Mr. Grossman.
The matter of remuneration for foster carers and reviewing the system is profoundly complex on two levels. So the national minimum standards that govern fostering services require that we consult with carers effectively on matters that impact upon their remuneration, which is right and proper. But the system that would be explored, through which we would consider the remuneration being based upon potentially the needs of the child, not upon the length of service, but from the foster carer, which is employed within the private sector, would require considerable calculation. So what I have assured Tracy is that the journey through which we understand what that may look like and its financial implications for the authority will start effectively within April. It is anticipated to take at least a year to work out a system through which it is both equitable and competitive with the private sector to ensure that we are not missing a trick. And I have no doubt that the matter will be brought to this committee as well when we've come to a form of resolution following consultation with the carers.
Thank you. I'm also aware that 2025 is a time for elections for the county and presumably PERDA. So, but you're well aware of that. Welcome back, Councillor Bradnam. We were just working our way through the CPCA report, and I had stopped Steve in mid-flow at 3.4. And Councillor Hay, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have a question on the fostering allowances. And I fully agree that it would be a good idea to break it down into skills and child allowances. What I wanted to know is any part of the allowance given to foster carers subject to taxation?
I understand, and this is to the best of my knowledge, rather than being presented as fact, that there is a £20,000 tax-free allowance provided to fostering households of exemption, and that they are supported through, we support them through the fostering network, enabled to submit their tax return, which enables them to ensure that they are paying the correct amount of tax.
Thank you. And that answer, together with some of the ones that we're still waiting for, if they can be part of the minutes. I think it's one of those occasions when it's not just the people present at the meeting who could benefit from these minutes. So if the things go in italics, from my point of view, I hope I'm not out of step with the chair. It's really helpful to have the answer in a timely way. Let's give it to Rishendra and we can add it in. Thank you. So if we now progress to 3.6, over to you. Because I think that's where I stopped you before, wasn't it? Children's files.
Thank you. Just to, I've just looked this up. It's actually £18,000 worth of tax-free exemption. 3.6 children's files. Carers have requested examples of logs for children's recordings, either fictitious or redacted, to maintain confidentiality so that they can improve their care recording. What is happening within the wider service is we are realigning our understanding of what outstanding quality looks like. I would expect for any child that wishes to access their logs in the future to have a narrative that is written to them, celebrating their day, celebrating how they overcome some challenges, celebrating how they enjoyed time with those that mattered to them most, and celebrating their achievements within that day. At this point in time, we do need to roll out training to the fostering service and perhaps also to our child in care colleagues in order to recognise and realign ourselves with what excellent recording looks like. We have heard the CFC on this, and we're pleased to provide some information about what it would look like to guide them, but we do want to provide training. The carers have also raised with this as further down within 3.6 that they would like more information based early on within their journey with the child to help them understand the needs of that child and prepare to meet them to a high standard. We are very pleased to respond to that, and even as recently as I think 4 hours ago, we re-delivered training to the fostering social workers in how to successfully find homes for children, which includes the provision of excellent information to the carer at the earliest stage. There will always be children that enter our care who we know very little about and have come into our care by nature of severe trauma that has been suffered to them. But many of our children that we provide a home to are children that we know well, we care a lot about, and have a good level of information on, and we need to improve as an internal fostering service in how we provide that information to our carers, but they've had that training today to reinforce that going forward. Next was online safety.
Are there
Sorry.
any questions on that one? I did want to express I welcome that, because we sometimes hear stories that children get taken into care, and if it is an emergency, even so, they're very often on the radar, and there are youth workers and people with clubs who know something would help that child, and they don't know how to get it into the system. Sometimes there appears to be a barrier. I hope that we can identify any barriers and make sure that they're not useful, let alone necessary. Thank you. I know you may need to filter things that people tell you, but there is a lot of information out there in people's communities, I think, that could be useful. Thank you very much. So the online safety. Thank you.
The matter of online safety impacting foster carers is incredibly important to how we equip them in order to keep children safe online. We know that children are far more vulnerable to exploitation via the online medium than they have ever been before. If the fostering service was to roll out immediately an online training session for foster carers on the nature of different online platforms, I very much doubt that it will fully scratch the itch that carers may have in helping them to understand how to navigate the complexities of mobile phones, hidden apps, and online vulnerabilities. What we are discussing internally is what it means to hold good workshops where carers can come with their mobiles, their tablets, and their computers to be able to go through them with them on a one-to-one basis. That does not preclude training being given to them. That can be delivered within the classroom context or online. But what we want is for those carers to be as skilled as the young people are in finding some of the issues that they find themselves within.
Thank you, Chair. This was one that concerned me because I recognise it as a significant weakness in my own knowledge. So I did wonder actually whether we could engage with the people who provide this parental controls, so the operators, whether we could engage with, and I won't name any providers, but the people who provide the online safety protections to us as phone and tablet users to come and talk to our foster carers with that concern as their focus, so that they can they know how to set stuff up on your phone, but if they could give us an overview, that would be really helpful. I don't know whether they offer that as a service, but then parents and carers can think, oh crikey, yes, I hadn't thought about that. Yes, how would I do that on this type of phone, you know? So I think something early, even if it's just an indicator, don't forget you can go to your provider, you can set these parental controls. I'm sure many of our foster carers are very aware of that, but I think some initial help, even if it meant then there was a helpline to the foster carers afterwards who say, you know, I'm still concerned that the child I'm looking after is still using a phone late at night or something like that. You know, it's just there's steps, aren't there, along the way of understanding, which I am right at the bottom of.
So the NSPCC worked in partnership with one particular phone carrier to great effect, and I understand that contract to have recently concluded. And but the NSPCC have maintained a lot of those training resources on their website, and they are often helpful. I think the truth is, when we consider our carer population, what has been reported to me and is statistically kind of evident is that many of the carers looking after our vulnerable children benefit from additional one-to-one support in helping them go through. Every time an app becomes well known, there is another one that will supersede it, which is much harder to find and is much more capable at having disappearing messages and everything along those lines, which make our children profoundly vulnerable and make it much harder to protect them. So my vision would be that ultimately we have social workers that are well skilled in acknowledging those online vulnerabilities, so that in the course of supervision with foster carers, they are also able to provide guidance and ensure that those carers are well equipped to manage those challenges. But we do need to review how we are providing training to carers and keeping them safe. As we approach our current preparation for some of our training budget for the year ahead, it has been a conversation already that I've had with the lead training manager for fostering about how we look at that one-to-one level, so that if somebody was really lacked confidence in the online world and keeping children safe, that they would leave that meeting feeling equipped.
It's a big ask because it's a big gap, and for some of us, it's actually, traumatic to even try to get the hang of it. Thank you.
Sorry, coming back on that, just thinking about it. We know that we've just been to our foster care, or last summer we went to our foster carer awards. And let's not forget, we were giving awards to foster carers who had been foster carers for 45 years. In other words, I hope they wouldn't mind if I pointed out they're not in the first flush of digital maybe awareness. They might be brilliant at it and much better than me. I'm sure lots of them are. But, there's a generational thing about this, and it would behove us to make sure that we give them as much support as we can. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Now I'd like to carry on. So sorry to break you up in that question, but I think we did have many questions on exercise number 3, so you're nearly there. Number 3.8, please.
3.8 relates to the ongoing relationship and dialogue that the Cambridgeshire Fostering Service enjoys with the CFCA. Whilst Tracy, if she was here, would almost certainly talk to some of the challenges in the past in communicating directly with the agency, it would just be my hope that if she was watching this today, she would not feel that they are currently the case, and that we have a renewed partnership work with in the future. Tracy has been, in particular, as the chair of the CFCA, I'm so incredibly grateful actually for not only her time as a foster carer, but the work that she does in bringing to us challenges that do impact upon individual carers, and giving us the grace and time to be able to address those challenges well. So our commitment as a service is very much to recognise them as a group of lead professionals who are really going to help us shape this service to be both child-centred and foster carer-centred as well. So we are committed completely to continue to work in partnership and supporting with the ongoing recognition that the association deserves in how it achieves change. And a key example of that would be that today we were able to change for the positive a foster carer mileage allowance, which will be made known to pet carers publicly, but that will very much be attributed to the hard work of the CFCA in bringing these matters to the attention of the authority, because it is important that that is recognised.
Thank you, and I'm very glad for that to be recognised on the public record and even online. Certainly, Tracy has been a great help to newbies on this committee. I can speak for Councillor Boulat and myself on that one. And I think the fact that we can also now rely on them being able to raise questions in a timely way and to get answers in a timely way, and even actions, as you've just demonstrated with the mileage. I think we are happy with that then. And generally, thank you very much for the report, bringing us up to date. And if there are any comments that Tracy did want to say, I don't think that, were there any other questions? I was explaining, Councillor Bradnam, that she's not even well enough to be watching, but on the other hand, when she does watch, she might be itching to say something, or if there were any questions that we would have raised if we'd had her here. We can say them now, and Richenda was going to make a note of them.
The only other thing that I wanted to say is I'm very glad that we're relaunching retention meetings, because once we've got foster carers, it's really, really important that we retain as many as we can, because it's so much harder to recruit new. So I'm very pleased to see that we're setting up that meet or redoing it, so that we're analysing why if we lose foster carers, why we're losing them and what we can do about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that was one of the most important things we've done today, is look at that report, and thank you very much for that, Steve. Item 7, annual health report. We could invite the officer to take a seat.
Hi,
So
everybody.
if you could introduce yourself and then your report. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's Katie Liddell. I'm the designated nurse for children in care, and I work at the Integrated Care Board, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. as has already been explained, you've already had my report. I'll just go through a few of the more poignant points. Sadly, at the point of writing the report, IHA performance was probably at its worst. And it was prior to the launch of the pathway that is described in the report. It was something that we did in response to there being so many delays, partly because of the delayed receipt of the referral and the parental consent that's required. And it was just prior to my colleague Catherine, who's sitting next to me, starting, and she took on board what we'd done and made it all singing, all dancing, embedded all the different pieces of local authority paperwork within the document that Health had started. So actually it's made a huge difference, and I'm sure in the next report you'll see the improved performance. I just also want to assure you all that all health assessments are completed. So the performance does look very small. That's because they're delayed. It's not because they're not completed. We strive to complete 100%. That's with the young person's consent as well. So it isn't ever going to be 100%, but we do complete all that are required. RHAs, you'll see there's better performance, but it's hoped that by passing the enduring consent that will improve that further, because we won't then need to go back for consent at every review health assessment. And finally, my last point to raise before I invite questions is about dental. I know it's been raised at every health corporate parent meeting that I've ever attended. I'm pleased to say it is improving. It's still not 100%, but it's not 100% for the background population either. When I compared children in care to other 0 to 18-year-olds within Cambridgeshire, it's actually better if you're in care. That's probably because there's more of a joined up way of working and trying to encourage those people. But sadly, young people vote with their feet sometimes. But 77% of children in care living in Cambridgeshire have seen a dentist in the last 12 months. And that's, I know it's not 100%, but better than it has been for a significant amount of time. So, yeah, I'd like to invite any questions.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I'll kick it off. Thanks for the report. Obviously, you've touched on this. It's really trying to explore it a bit more, because I'm just trying to find the bit there. Yeah, obviously the initial health assessments aren't, a lot of them, the vast majority aren't completed with the 20 working days. But it seems the major reason for that is the referral is being received after the 20 working days, 54%. So on 3.4. So as you say, the next report you think will be a lot better. But just trying to, is there any underlying reason why it was like that, or is it just things happened and it just needed a kick up the proverbial to get it started again? Thank you.
I want to answer about anything about kicking, but if you do, Katie.
Yeah.
I think maybe a little bit of both. I think there's quite a high turnover of staff, sadly, in social working, particularly with children in care. It doesn't always sit with the children in care team. I think it sits more with the assessment and family social working. And I think there's lots of different changes. So I think having this one pathway, we wanted it really short, really succinct, just an aid memoir of a pathway of those 20 days, where a social worker can just glance to the side of their screen at one piece of paper, not a huge policy or document, that says, oh, it's day 6. What are we supposed to be doing? Have we done X, Y, and Z? And if we haven't, who do we have to let know? And what do we have to share with them? And I think that's really the crux of it, to be fair. I think it just needed to be really clear, really succinct, and quite simple.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting the pathway, because I think we can all see how useful that must be. I think we probably all like to see it, but you never know, if we let that out of a department, it becomes a bit of a hostage of fortune. So we won't demand to see it, but the fact that you have worked one out, and I'm sure it's a help. I ought to make myself lots of pathways. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. And I think, Katie, you've said Catherine Isaacs helped bring that together. I just wanted to say a particular thank you to you for grasping that nettle. And I suspect, Ranjit, that was because you asked Catherine to do it. So
I think
thank you.
Catherine was leading on that
Okay.
before I arrived, and I think she's done a remarkable job.
Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that, because sometimes coming in and looking at something with fresh eyes is really obviously helped that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So my own question is in 312. Didn't see it. Yeah, you're right. And that is coming in from having the same questions in health scrutiny and in adults and health. I couldn't help noticing, and this is something for the whole county, not just children in care, the shortage of local orthodontists. Now, I think that the shortage is particularly NHS ones, but when one everybody recognises the importance to a child's confidence, neglected teeth may well, be their problem. Is there a way of perhaps going private? Because this sort of thing is suggested to me, and it's something I would like to know whether it's being explored or could be. It would appear to be money well spent, and I don't know whether you were already thinking along those lines.
Yeah, certainly. So going back 30 years when I had my braces, every child in my class had a brace. Sadly, now the criteria is much more stringent, and those that require orthodontic treatment that is able to be accessed on the NHS, it's much more, there's much more of a criteria that's required. Going privately is the only option if you don't meet the criteria. It is something that's been explored along with free prescriptions for care leavers within the ICB, and perhaps something that the local authority and the ICB can collaborate on and share that payment together. I think that's something that our chief nurse has certainly been open to discussions on. So yeah, perhaps something we could take forward together and collaborate on.
That'd be good. And I think if there are there may well be counsellors who have contacts, and that's often what we're quite useful for. And there are certainly people who want to help and who recognise the need in this particular group of young people. So thank you. I would hope we can, have an informal sort of action point on that one, but not actually record it, because it would be over and above what is, your statutory responsibility. Thank you. We're pleased to see the immunisation. That's my other note, and the rates are excellent. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Sharp.
It's just following on your answer on the dentist side. You mentioned if they, it's me trying to understand this, if they don't meet the criteria, is the access to NHS dentistry the same for non? Or is it different? That's what I'm obviously, it's being new to this committee. I don't know that the answer to that question. Yeah.
No, it's different. Any child is able to access NHS dentist, as in preventative and checkups and treatment if they require it. I think the difficulty is with the capacity on dentistry waiting lists. As is stated in the report, there are 4 dentists that have signed up across Cambridgeshire and 1 in Peterborough that have an open access to all children in care and will see them, but it does require travel if it's not in their immediate locality. That's not to say that any of the other dentists won't take on those children. It's purely dependent on their waiting lists. And with children in care, often they move. So sitting on a waiting list isn't ideal, because by the time they get to the top of that, they've moved to a different home. So that's why we've got it's called the CHIC, volunteer dentist, it stands for children in care, that will see those children immediately rather than make them wait on a list.
If that is all the questions, thank you very much indeed for your report. Very helpful. Lots of stuff that we need to read several times. And thank you. the clinical team, related issue. I think we've kept our questions in the right place. These two different groups of our officers. Is that Vanessa? Once you're settled in, if you'd like to introduce yourself, add your report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and councillors. My name's Vanessa Kinsey-Thatcher. I'm the interim clinical lead for the corporate parenting clinical team here at the County Council. You've received the report, and what we wanted to do was highlight the figures from last financial year, which I have to just point out there's an erroneous 79% that should have been removed before the report was sent to yourselves, so apologies for that. So it's just wanted to mention that. So I'm just going to start with the kind of overview which you've read, and the exciting developments that the clinical team have been able to drive forward, particularly in this last financial year. So since the figures, we have an amazing team of clinicians, and it's important, Chair, that and councillors, that I mentioned we are separate from our health colleagues in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Foundation Trust. We're commissioned by the County Council, and we're independent practitioners and clinicians with our own professional registrations that provide this service. So not to be mixed up with our specialist community CAMHS colleagues, although we work collaboratively with them. We very much focus on an attachment-based therapeutic approach, and that includes bringing in any of the adults in that child's life, to work with them to strengthen the attachment that is often disrupted or ends up being a poor attachment, and that leads to dysregulated behaviour and behaviours that challenge, rather than necessarily work directly with the children. However, we will work directly with children and their carers, and we, sort of focus on that relationship, that dyad, as per I've mentioned the didactic developmental psychotherapy, not yet a NICE recommended guidance, but it's in its first randomised controlled trial. So we're hoping that that will come through, but that is the model of care and approach that we use. You can see that we have, we still have a rejection rate, as it were, a declined rate of referrals at 3.6, table of 19%. That is actually improved from the previous financial year. And indeed, next year, I hope you will receive an even lower decline rate on the referrals, which will be helpful. And indeed, it's worth noting, Chair, that we have received double the referrals in the last year. So we've got a lot more children coming through. We have some vacancies. It might be worth clarifying on the specialist clinician vacancy in 4.1. It's actually a 0.35 whole-time equivalent, so that's just less than 2 days a week, so that's quite difficult to recruit to, but we are planning to put that out.
Which was that, the assistant psychologist? Was
No,
it
that's
the other one?
one of the 6 allocated specialist clinicians. We just have a 0.35 whole-time equivalent vacancy rather than a whole-time, so we are pretty much fully staffed. And it's worth noting that when I arrived 18 months ago almost, it was predominantly agency staff, and we are now permanently staffed, apart from myself. Okay. You can see in section 5, I've talked about the service developments that we're aiming for, including the didactic developmental psychotherapy, and the training and support that we're going to be giving to not just our fostering colleagues, but across corporate parenting, including reunification teams and family safeguarding. So we are very much involved across corporate parenting, which is another development from perhaps previously when you've had reports on this team. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Let's let Brandon first.
Thank you very much, Chair. So thank you very much for your report. I'll ask you the questions and then you can come back with all of them. So at 3.1 and indeed also at 5.4, you've given a long list of named therapies. And I'd just like to be reassured that all of those models have been actually in practice shown to be effective.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be chair because I actually find it really hard to keep track of these things in my head. I would quite like question and answer if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure.
And then a follow-up question may be necessary.
Yeah,
and it may mean that another question from another councillor isn't necessary. So
Okay.
would you mind? I think we have a small enough committee to do that. Thank you.
Of course. Yes, I did write down an extensive list of modalities that we use, and that's because we're all clinicians from different backgrounds, so nursing, psychology, counselling, and so each sort of clinician will have trained in their own modality. And indeed, we've now identified more models of approach, for example, the non-violent resistance training course for child-to-parent violence, that's extremely effective. We review the evidence base all the time. We don't practice any therapeutic approaches or interventions without having researched it.
Didn't doubt it, but I'm glad to hear it confirmed. The second one was at 3.6, the percentage of referrals that have been declined. I wondered if you could just give us some context around why that happens, why we get declines.
Yes, so we get declines because more often than not, thematically, we have identified social workers or perhaps teachers that know the social worker will refer the child in when there's been a change of home or a change of placement. And this is so destabilizing. We often, will support by saying and having a conversation that we need that child to be allowed a period of time to adjust into that new home before we then go in and sort of offer that therapeutic work.
Alludes to the second part of that, which is, I can appreciate at a time of trauma, that may not be quite the right time to do a particular intervention. So do you follow up later?
Yes, certainly. It's not a case of, you refer in, we decline the referral. We give a very, very comprehensive and robust response to our social workers that's very clearly laid out, when they should come back and how they will do that. Yeah.
I'm going to say it here, not because it's particularly your report, but all of the reports. I would like to see more detail in the significant implications sections on many of the reports we've received. I've sort of highlighted, surely there's an equality and diversity risk, or surely there are some risk implications here, even if it's legal, to make sure that we are delivering our responsibilities as corporate parents. So I'd just like to see a little more detail in that aspect of our reports, but it's not about yours particularly, Vanessa, it's about many of them. Thank you.
Any other councillors, any questions? In which case, if I may comment, I think I saw Ranjit nodding about that last bit in terms of the useful discipline of answering the last section, but sometimes it must be at that bit of time you don't have, but thank you. I was really taken aback by the realization when you explained it, that most of the therapeutic delivery is with the foster carer. It's not in the clinician's office or however nice the sofa is in the sitting room. That is not the answer, is it? It's when the child can't get to sleep, etc., etc. So I think it points up for all of us just how important the therapeutic parenting is that our foster carers provide for our children. And that took me up short when I realized that. Not that your team is clearly there, not just to, but very importantly, to advise and train. Now, my question follow up then, when I thought about it, is, are these clinicians trained to train? Because it's one thing to know something, it's quite another to be able to help somebody else to know it. You're nodding, but can we have it for the record, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. we have made great strides in that, and now half the team are trained under Kim Golding, who is an established psychologist who delivers the Foundations for Attachment and Nurturing Attachments 3-day course. 50% of the team have now trained in that. The aim is obviously over the next year for all members of the team to train, and that allows us to provide a frequency that's very regular for foster carers and other people to attend that training.
Because I can imagine that it needs to be a bit bespoke past the foundations, because foster care is so different. And then there is follow-up that's even more bespoke for particular children. And that's presumably more in the hands of the clinician. Am I understanding the system?
Yes, you've got it. You've got it right, Chair. I think it's such a sensitive piece of work to be done around, because whenever anybody attends any training around attachment, they're going to explore their own attachment and their own sort of experience of being parented. So it has to be bespoke. It has to be delivered very sensitively and by 2 clinicians minimum. And it's done over a 6-week course. So we're hoping to be launching that from April, as per the report.
It occurs to me that that may even have had a part to play in retention in the past, and hopefully we don't blunder in the future if we did in the past. Thank you. Any more questions on the clinical report? Thank you very much, Anne, for explaining the system. We found this chart. Well, no, you did. Councillor Bradnam found this chart. We now have to work out from that who is which, but that's not really our business. And thank you so much, Ursula, for your report. So the next item is the core parenting performance report, and this centres around the scorecard. We did have some technical issues with getting it so that it would go in landscape for people with not such very good eyes like me. And I think that everybody's getting a copy. And thank you for doing the technicalities of that. It's a great help. But we obviously probably had all picked up on a few typos. And so we need now at this meeting to establish its veracity, or even whether there is still some things to follow, so that what goes on the record is up to date and correct. And so for that, I'm passing the chair back. Sorry if it's not protocol or agenda, but it's only appropriate. Passing the chair back to Councillor Bradnam, and no doubt okay, all right, but over to Councillor Bradnam to ask questions. And thank you.
That's fine. I'll ask some questions through you, Chair, and then we can take them like that. So thank you very much. We've got half in, well, that's interesting. We've got half in landscape and half in portrait, which is fun and games. So we're halfway there. The point about it being landscape is it makes the text a little bit bigger, which is easier to read, but I appreciate it might not have been easy to format. So thank you very much for revising that. I wondered do you have any update on the numbers? If we go from page 1, the headline figures first, do you have any update on the staffing numbers where we've got hash not applicable under the staffing section?
So, Councillor Bradnam, this is something that we're working on, and hopefully for the next meeting, we'll be able to populate that information. So please accept our apologies for having it absent on this occasion.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to that next time. So the next thing was the service standards. So we're under percentage of children in care statutory visits which were carried out on time, 72.4, and that's quite a long way below the 98 that was desirable for the target. And can you just remind us, these targets are nationally set targets, aren't they? Often they're not just within our authority.
I believe the 98% is within our authority, and it's something that we're going to review. It's quite a high
seems-
percentage.
It seems a demanding target
Absolutely.
and not really fair if it's actually unreasonable and it can't be done in time. So that's.
It's something definitely on our, that's something for us to review.
Yeah, actually, the bit we have lost is the table about homes. So just be aware that under the section homes, there was some narrative and a circular table with a bar chart. So there's information there that's missing. If anybody's looking online, it's the home stability, the type of home of children in care and other settings with a breakdown of what those other settings are. I didn't have any questions on that, but does any, yeah,
We haven't quite sorted out what the actual scorecard should look like. We-
okay.
Did you want to come in there, councillor Sharp?
If I come in on homes, it's just a question again for, I suppose, clarity and just trying to understand it. I mean, we're looking at, it's page 48, as councillor Bradnam said, on the homes. The 12.2%, I mean, I'm presuming that's a combination of things because for children in care, the fact that 12.2% had 3 or more homes in the last 12 months, to me as a layperson, that seems a lot. And I'm sure there's loads of different reasons, but I just, you know, whether the child or the foster carers can't cope or there's change of circumstances or I just wonder if there's something that seems to me something, if we could improve that percentage and get more stability for those children, then that would be a massive improvement. You know, it's not a criticism, it's trying to understand how we could improve it and what's the underlying trend behind it, really.
Catherine, you're looking as if you wanted to.
Catherine, do you want to respond? I'm happy to respond if you don't.
We were going to bring a report to the next subcommittee analysing placement stability, short and long term. It's often a combination of factors. So, for example, if you have a parent in a mother and baby unit within care proceedings, and then they step down into the step down provision, and then they step down into a parent and baby foster placement. So it might be very positive moves, but that counts in that statistic. So often when you break it down, it's a mixture of both positive, successful moves. You might be reuniting siblings that have been separated or moving children from short to long-term foster placements. But there will also be children who've experienced a number of moves because their needs haven't been able to be met, or we're establishing a much clearer view of their needs and finding the right home for them. So the plan is that for the next subcommittee, we'll provide a detailed analysis of last year's performance around the short and long-term stability, which are both performance indicators that we have to respond to the government about.
Thank you. And I think that's interesting, Catherine, because I think one of the things we become aware of as we are longer and longer involved in this subcommittee is the complexity of the types of placement that children are in. And these can change according to their needs, but also according to how whether that's suitable for them and whether there's alternative and better options for them to move to. But it is, Councillor Sharp is right, it's a sort of slightly alarming number, isn't it? And so, yes, some more narrative, I think, would be most welcome. Thank you. One of the things I also wanted to ask about and was on the page about education. I think it's that one. Yes, it's the percentage of school-aged children in care in good or outstanding schools is 66.6%. And I just wondered if it's possible. I know the children who are not in our care are not part of our database, but I'm sure through Children and Young People's Committee, we have a percentage of children in our county who are in good or outstanding schools. And so all I wanted was this 66.6 is the percentage of our school-aged children in care who are in good or outstanding schools. And how does that compare? How does that benchmark against all children in good or outstanding schools? Because if for for children who are not in care, they are also 66% in good or outstanding schools, then no problem. We're keeping parity with that. But if our children in care were significantly worse off in terms of good or outstanding schools, then we might be worried about that. So I think is it possible to benchmark that against all children in the county?
It's something that we can explore.
Very much.
I would support that, because I think the reason to have something like this is an indicator of whether the schools are turning our children down. And if there was an issue, that might have been picked up as an individual issue with the particular academy trust. And that is one where you may wish people to take it further, either as officers or as members. So to have the basic context, as you suggest, on the scorecard would be good. Councillor Sharp, you were prompted by that.
Thank you. Yes, very much so. And it's very interesting. It's in my declarations. I'm co-chair of governors at Bodysham Village College and chaired the governing body meeting last night, actually. And we spent a fair bit of time talking about SEND and EHCP. But obviously, and so it's very interesting because there's another cohort here of children in care who may not have EHCPs or, but obviously being in care may mean that they're not progressing as academically as we would like. So it's prompted a thought, that stat there has really prompted a thought in my brain as to something we certainly at school college level, we should hopefully try and capture.
Yes, and without it being the job of this committee or micromanage, I think for governors, as a general rule, to be aware if they have a foster carer in their catchment area, to know about that person and to be responsive in a timely way to the needs of the children coming into that person's care may well be appropriate. Obviously, sometimes the children stay in the school they were in, but that is obviously all confidential and individual, but maybe just awareness is helpful. Councillor Hay.
Going back to homes, when reading this, it says that 0% of children who have been in care for 2.5 years, 0% have been in their current home for 2 or more years, which would indicate to me that 12.2% relates to children who are freshly coming into care. Is that correct?
I'm afraid the 0% is an error. So there is a correction of that. So the long-term placement stability, which is children who've been in care for more than 2.5 years and have been in the same home for 2 years, is at 73.3%. And the aim would be for at least 68%. So that we're meeting our target around that. And the report will outline there's always area for improvement in terms of short-term placement stability, which is children who've been in care over the last year and experienced 2 or more moves, so 3 or more homes. That will be a mixture of children who've just come into care and have moved several times for various reasons. And it will also include some of the children in the 27% where we haven't achieved long-term placement stability, where they've had a number of moves. So it's a mixture of both. So apology for the error.
And thank you for endeavouring to address the issues that I raised in advance of the meeting about the school card. Can I just understand, is it that the person who used to format it has left and we're now just trying to restore that skill?
So we do have a new colleague that creates the scorecard, but we do recognise that there is further work to be done to develop the scorecard. So we're working on that, and it's something that we hope to again present at the next meeting in a more coordinated way. But please forgive us for the
I appreciate we've had a lot of changes of staff, so I'm quite mindful that we're restocking that skill. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, and I would add, we also realise that you've had Ofsted going on, and although we're glad you've all survived, and any messages we've heard we mustn't share yet. But thank you very much for enduring it and managing to keep things going along at the same time. I think that the trouble is the scorecard. We welcome it getting so much information in a small space. But I think if you get desperate, just print off separate graphs if you really need to. And I'm sure we will understand. But yes, but when there is an authorized version with a date on it, we'll welcome receiving that and it being online. Thank you. I didn't see any other. Oh, yes, Councillor Machini.
Now, please forgive me, I did have a little bit of trouble getting my head around this one. It looks fine, it's busy. It will take me a little while to, get my head around. So my best encouragement to permanent members of this committee. The only bit that caught my eye, and it caught my eye when I was looking at this online, and I kind of looked at it again because it seems to be, is the 7% of the health service standards for the initial visits, which looks to be the only bit of the scorecard which is absolutely wildly out of whack with the target.
So can I comment? I'll comment.
Is
Yes,
that
please.
something we should comment on?
So that is an error, and please forgive us. This is something that we need to work on. I did mention this to Councillor Bradnam in advance of the meeting. It's an area that we need to do some further work on. So hopefully at the next meeting, you will have some more accurate data on that key performance indicator.
And in general, sorry for being a bit thick here, but in general, is the discussion on sort of the deep dive behind each of these things, is this to be found anywhere or not?
So I think possibly I'm along with Councillor Hay, we might be some of the longest serving members on this committee. When I first joined Corporate Parenting Subcommittee, it was in the process of being reformulated from what it had been before. And so we had to decide what we wanted to see as data to the committee. And so we asked the officer, what can you give us? And she said, well, I can give you. And we said, yes, please, can we have a bit of all of them? Which was how the scorecard came about. In other words, it was going to be 2 sides, and it was going to be a snapshot of raw data, the service standards, homes and how placements were working, education, adoption, health, and how children were getting on. So we saw the same format every time we met. And so it meant that as members coming regularly, we knew that there were some things that were always tricky. We knew that there were some that we needed to improve, and it informed our wishes to the officers in terms of what we then wanted to actually look at really carefully. So it has informed a sort of closer inspection of some subjects over the time. And I appreciate it cannot be an easy thing to come. I'm very glad we're going to get it next time. But what I'm mindful of, it's probably an enormous amount of work to produce it, but actually it's extremely useful to us as corporate parenting members. And I hope the officers find it useful too. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. Can I just also direct you to the data under the adoption, which was recorded at 25.7%. The actual data is 22.2. And if you look at the last column, it actually says 28.2, and that was one of the amendments that we made today, which is why we've recirculated this document.
I think we have a combination of things online that have been corrected, things online that were a bit out of date and could be improved on, and we have some things that we tried to print and didn't come out. So I think, but I really appreciate your trying, and I'm sorry if you've been tussling with a printer out there. But yes, we look forward to the finished version. Because it will make a good comparison, as we've been able to in previous times. It is that progress that we look out for. And I've got my hang, it takes a while to get the hang of it, isn't it? It is busy, as you say, but really useful. Let me go back to the script that Richenda has given me, make sure that I think where I am. So item 10. Yep. Subcommittees workshop and training plan. Catherine Isaacs, Head of Corporate Parenting. Let me give you your proper title. Anything to highlight, please?
I think the main points are to highlight that in June 24, we're hoping to roll out local government association training for everybody around corporate parenting responsibilities across CYP members and corporate parenting subcommittee members, and that there's also a proposal to utilise one of the CYP reserve meetings to offer all members an overview of corporate parenting from our executive director, and the rest of the training programme, I think, is fairly self-explanatory, but I hope there'll be more precise dates for Monday, and I'll liaise with Richenda and Dee Revens to make sure we have those in place for your meeting on Monday.
And I think it's then up to all members of the subcommittee to encourage our fellow members of the council to notice them and go along if they can. We had already mentioned trauma awareness. Is that in there? You just check, because we did want to just make sure that was an all-member invitation.
I'm not sure that it is actually on the list, but I am in discussions already with the virtual school about rolling it out. So I'll make sure that it is added. And we've already identified a date for staff within the corporate parenting service for that to happen. And we're trying to work out a date that would, because it is an in-person training and requires quite a lot of space as well as the numbers. So we're just trying to work out the logistics of it, but it is in hand.
And I appreciate that often members of the council can't get along to one, and we hope to have several offers. And I think in the past we've gone into partnership with other organisations or taken up any vacancies, and presumably we offer vacancies as well within the networks. I think I ended up with a Church of England one, but and the questions people were asking, I suddenly realised yes, but because it has to be in person, that may not be known. You can't do it on YouTube at all. It would not be good for you, put it that way. Thank you very much. Were there any other questions or concerns about the training programme? Thank you. Or things on the agenda. I have already mentioned, Councillor Bradnam, my concern about the homes for foster carers getting into our council system somehow. It clearly is the responsibility of district councils to have a lettings policy set out, and this would be something we were wanting to add in terms of, well, we have our protected characteristic policy, as we know, and it's a matter of just encouraging our various district councils, and I'm aware some are double-hatted in this room. Is it just you? Yeah. Councillor Bradnam, but just, I think I'm over to the officers for how they would like it to be taken forward, because I know that they want to be able to improve this. Yes.
I am a double hatter. I sit on South Cambs District Council, and I have already raised this issue at our own scrutiny and overview, which is pre-scrutiny of the decision determining papers that go to Cabinet. But nothing wrong with, us as a county council and with concern for foster carers actually writing a formal letter to the housing providers, the district councils, to say, please, can you bear in mind? And it's two aspects, isn't it? One is giving priority to our care leavers for first homes. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's a statutory responsibility around that. But it's also about our housing service being mindful of foster carers as people who might be tenants, and being flexible around provision of or allowing foster carers to retain homes that have slightly more than the number of bedrooms that they strictly need, in order that they might be able to foster another child. So that's quite a subtle point to get across. So I think it might be helpful if our officers actually wrote to the district councils and we can agree some wording of that letter. But I would quite like to suggest that we do that.
I think that's quite helpful, Councillor Bradnam, and I think it would be beneficial to have a meeting with Steve Crossman as Head of Service of Fostering to consider the offer that you're making and then think about how that would fit in with our current foster carers and if that offer would be beneficial to foster carers. I know there's assessments that need to be completed before we consider foster carers having additional children placed with them. So I would welcome a meeting with Steve Crossman to discuss that further in the first instance.
Thank you. This came up some time ago, just in conversation at one of the festivals, the awards, which are immensely useful. And Kath Moore is quite happy to be identified as one of our established and well-valued carers who's in Huntingdon District Council. She has already applied to her housing association. We have the correspondence trail, which is helpful, I think, as an example. But essentially, we're after putting a clause in the lettings policy that they have to conform with, because this must be seen to be fair. And that is something that hopefully can then be repeated around the district councils. I wouldn't be at all surprised, given the new skills we have in our team here, that there may well be one you already know of in another district council. I'm very happy to steal theirs if we know it works, because it's got to be subject, it's got to hold up in court if somebody was to challenge it.
There is a slightly downside to this, and that is, of course, because district councils have a responsibility to let their homes to families that are most in need of that size of home. And so they have a kind of obligation that if, for example, there's a couple who are renting a house and who have, say, a child who's older, who's left home, so they now need one fewer bedrooms, there's a kind of push towards encouraging that couple, not necessarily to move out of their home, but to make sure that they only are renting a house that has the right number of bedrooms for them. But if this, it's a flexibility issue. People need to understand that and as you say, there's a whole load, many a slip twixt cup and lip between people applying to be foster carers and becoming so. And so it's simply, I think it should start off with a discussion with housing providers at our district councils. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think any of us who've done this sort of casework will pretend it's easy when you're dealing with the criteria and a letting policy, and what it might be seen as unfair. So thank you. I think we have now reached the end of the agenda. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll sign the minutes of last time, but you weren't here to say whether you were happy with it. I'm sure you'd have drawn attention if there was anything you weren't happy with, Councillor Bradnam. Thank you. And I'm glad you could join us. And thank you for our new members and substitutes. Carry on the good work and pass the word round about the training, because it's really good. And so are foster carers. We may well be able to talk to Tracy later, and thank you very much. Safe journey home.